Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have another excellent game to share with you from the Top Chess Engine Championships Season 28 Premier Division. This was a round 11 game played August 7th. On the white end, KomodoDragon, rated 3620, playing against Leela Chess Zero, rated 3692. Alright, an 84 mover. Our start position for this game is right here. 6 moves in, Leela begins this game with space. The first move of this game is by KomodoDragon, plays knight a3. Now, there's already a few cases of fixed pawns. We're in for a lot of maneuvering in this game, as you might expect. 84 mover. Very instructive to see how the structure evolves in this one and how the pieces adapt, or at least try to adapt to the structure. As it stands now, there's one invasive pawn, but eventually Leela will establish 3. And those 3 pawns will have a significant impact on 3 white minor pieces. All right, let's get some more moves in here. We will eventually have a same sides castles game, king side castles. Play on the queen side by Leela. Knight falling back, gearing up for the pawn break. There we are, same sides castles. Leela, not interested in the capture on c4. This would open up a nice square for the knight. The connected pass pawn firmly blockaded. So it's just castles. Knight a3, and from here we have b4, the space grab. Now, rather than allocating the rook to the defense of the pawn, it simply advances here. Once more, not a good idea to take on c4 in this case. White would be recapturing with the knight. That'd be a fantastic improvement for that piece. Exerting pressure on e5 ties in well with f4. So, no way. Invasive pawn number 2 now established. And some prep work. So, setup-wise, how to handle the ensuing f4. Okay, knight h7, f4. We see the capture immediately. Now, if you don't capture, what might end up being very scary for black, let's say a5 is played instead, this could be a difficult pawn to handle. So we get one pawn exchange in there. See the capture on f4. We have some more wiggle room. It's a much more dynamic position. The king only has one pawn as shelter, and these pawns can be influenced. Follow up, a5, king h1. When I saw this move, a5, one of the first thoughts I had was that, okay, there might be, in Leela's future, this idea of rook a6 to g6. And a couple moves from now, Stockfish 17.1 at least, is looking at this as a possibility, but it is not something that Leela goes for in this game, but it's certainly something to keep in mind. This is a benefit of advancing these queenside pawns. You have that quick rook up and over. King, again, only with one pawn as shelter. All right, in this one, the king's post up on that h-file. Queen e2, queen c7. Something that stood out to me with this position, these two pawns, this pawn duo, either one could advance at some point. And notice, because of how black's pieces are arranged, neither pawn advance is going to be hitting with tempo. It's just something that grabbed my attention there, right? These pawns move, potentially control any of these 4 squares. Okay, they're not occupied by any of black's pieces. Black is cool, sort of working from afar here. All right, we have bishop f3, Rook on A to E8, bishop G4, and now we see some action. Structure is going to change significantly through these next few moves. We have now F5, bishop H5, rook D8, and a connected passer. Follow up G5, B3, G4. That's invasive pawn number 3, now established. And look at the influence it has on these 3 minor pieces. There's only one forward square for this knight. On G2, a fianchettoed knight, rarely a good sign. All right, from here we have H3. Leela supports the pawn. Bishop F7 and H5. Okay, so Leela clearly prepared to play down the exchange. KomodoDragon does not go for it. Continues with A3. Now, if you capture the rook, you're really asking for trouble because this bishop is going to hurt you. This diagonal is definitely going to be a problem for white. And do know that by giving up this bishop for knight, if white went for that, this is white's only active piece. All right. From here we have A3. That's move 27. A lot of pawn moves. Nearly half the moves have been pawn moves up to this point. A file may be ready to be peeled open. Rook G7. Bishop D5. Let's pause for a moment. There's one good piece for white, the bishop on D5, and that's it. Now, there's a significant space difference, as mentioned. You have these invasive pawns. Let's look at some ranks here for a moment. These 3 ranks for black are clear of any black pawns. These 3, on the other hand, we can't say the same. Now, if we just bring into focus one rank for each side, let's focus on each side's 3rd rank. Something about these ranks in particular stuck out. Where is a good square for a white minor piece on white's 3rd rank? Does there even, does one even exist? I mean, G3 might be a post, but who even gets there? A bishop? And if it gets there, what is it even doing? Compare this rank with black's 3rd rank. Look at the options that are available for black. H6 might be a square for a knight. G6, E6, C6, currently occupied. B6, A6, many of these not the greatest. Something is likely to happen, on the king side of the board, where there is tension with the H pawn and G pawn, where there is, we can say, a majority, G4, H5 versus the H3 pawn. These squares will soon be occupied by black knights. The space advantage is very telling here. All right, let's see the maneuvering. There's one good piece for white. This will eventually be challenged. So let's see the setup in a position to recapture. It's a good way to lose your queen. All right, bishop getting out of the way. We see a rook lift. The king, by the way, hightailing it towards the queen side, volatile king side that's going to be safer over here on B2. Bishop backs off. Right around the corner, the knight was ready to challenge the bishop. It falls back on its own. The bishop's path so far, ends up dying on that H1 square. This is the path for the bishop in this game. Back on white side of the board. Knight E7. Knight on E to G6. Knight E6, and there you go. a restriction now placed on white's pieces. Nice coordination on f4. All right, let's get some more improving moves in here. See the setup exactly. This move grabbed my attention, a4. Wait a second, just moments ago, well, move 27 at least, a3 was played. Why not maybe capture and have a half-open file? Here's the thing. If black captures on b4, a good way to recapture would be with the c-pawn. Not taking towards the center in this case. This is where you see the bishop post on d8 really show up with this decision. Very nice piece, working from a distance, watching over h4 and a5, and also with this capture, c5 has opened up. That can be a killer piece, paving the way for a timely break. You do not want to create the situation where the queen side can be busted open with the king over here on b2. So not a good idea to chop on b4. We have that wing shut down. Queen a8. Well, she feels comfortable here. Not going to be any, the a file is not going to be opening up now. This is a nice battery. All right. Kingside play from here. See the new setup. We now have a pawn advance, poison pawn. Queen falls back to g1. If you take the pawn, this is winning. Also points out even better would be knight h4. And this is going to collapse. There's now 4 pieces on that. White is only securing it 3 times. So a poison g pawn. And what more can this pawn be doing? I mean, the pawn is pretty much offsetting the queen. The queen doesn't have a move. Okay, so space for black, even more space with g3. All right, from here, king g8, king b1, we are nearing a sacrifice. After rook d2, Leela now smashes through with knight g takes f4. We'll see how that all plays out soon enough. Now, this is the position I really struggled with the most. I tested out different moves. I tried to find a way to win for black if this sacrifice on f4 is not permitted. So I tested out lines where the king just shuffles and what is the setup going to be for black to actually win. Let me point out that moving this knight is going to lose pretty much right away. So if this knight goes back here, we chop away on h1, and then there isn't enough support on f4, you just win a pawn. So the knight is stuck, black is significantly restricted, and this dates all the way back to this earlier pawn play. Started out, okay, the start position, we had an invasive pawn on d4, eventually b4 established, g4 established. Remember that earlier talk about these ranks right here and how there's these nice squares that are open for black's minor pieces and white cannot do similar? Notice because of this, the pressure they have on white's camp, the restricted position black is now in. This all has a huge domino effect on the position. White is running out of moves. Now, rather than the move in the game, rook to d2, let's say the king just shuffles. What is a winning path? I'm going to be making several moves here. Forget about what white is doing. This is a setup I came up with using Stockfish 17.1 where you can make progress. So a lot of maneuvering here. It wants to establish this pawn on h4, open up h5 eventually for the queen. This is very elaborate, I realize. Wants to put the bishop on h6, exerting pressure on f4, and then go for this idea of queen h7. This move rook c8 to support this, so that should the knight move and there is a capture, the rook can recapture and the king feels cozier, not allowing the queen to enter along this diagonal. All right, as mentioned, very elaborate. And eventually, this is how you might see progress made. A queen post on h5, knifing into white's position, targeting the rook, and maybe in some cases, paving the way for bishop f3. Rook back, bishop e2, d3 might fall. It's very elaborate, but okay, this is how you may have ended up seeing Leela make progress if there wasn't that opportunity to smash away on f4. Okay, let's go all the way back and see how this plays out after white in this position plays rook d2. We now have knight g takes f4, knight takes knight, bishop takes bishop, and in this position the knight falls back to g2. If knight takes knight, you recapture with the king, and a point here is that if queen captures bishop, there is g2 with a fork. So queen g1, you take the rook, you get the queen, you're winning that. So we don't see the capture on e3. It's knight g2, bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop, h4, connected pass pawn, very dangerous. Connected pass pawn, just 2 steps away from promotion. Follow-up is knight e1. If rook captures pawn, it says just to hide and then contest the file. Black will be able to make headway soon on this completely opened f file. All right, the f pawn now picked up, knight reposition, f5 defended. You're also going into a pin. The queen is now free based on the pin there. Rook f8, queen e2, queen e8. Queen e8 is there to hide the king next. You don't have to worry about queen h5, king b1, connected passers, run. King c2, knight g5, have to defend h3 in some way. You do run into this discovered attack now. Knight e4 into f2, once more targeting h3. And at this point, KomodoDragon gives up the exchange. And from here, we're just going to see the conversion being up the material. There isn't really a whole lot more to be commenting on. This pawn eventually will fall. And if you can push those passed pawns successfully, you do so. White on the back foot there. Leela cleaning house at this stage. This passed pawn was never a factor in this game, always under control. Inching in now. Doesn't get too much better for that rook position. Passed pawn supported. Silly checks flicked in. And we're not going to go too much further here. There we go. We have a check. Another check. Chop. We have checkmate right around the corner. Another check. Okay. Rook takes, queen is there. Doesn't even recapture. If you do, plenty of ways to do it. Mate in 2. We have a knight move and back rank check leading straight to checkmate. I really like this game. Nice positional crush, frequently the case with these games, playing first with invasive pawn number 1 on d4, establishing a second on b4, and eventually g4 that had too great an influence on 3 of white's minor pieces, and there was really no surviving it. Anyhow, your thoughts with this one. Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.